Right now.
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 Because it's time to right now.
Right now.
Right. Welcome back, writers, to another daily writing sprint stream. I am so stoked to be able to help you and get back into the writing vibe this week, as last week I was held back by technical difficulties. So welcome to the stream. Today we're going to be doing 2 writing sprints, 30 minutes apiece. We're going to be pushing ourselves. This is always a great way to push in the week. I know we're still super early, so welcome. And then make sure to stick around till the break, and we'll catch up a little bit. We'll see how our writing is doing. By the way, if you're new to the community, welcome. I'm Kaufman, daily writing streamer, fantasy author, and dragon enthusiast. So, I'm pushing into one of the darkest parts of my book, The Last Scarecrow. What part of your story are you on? I would love to hear. Drop a comment, and we will be getting right into it. So, getting into a first writing sprint for me of the day is a really, really good vibe. As you can see, I already have my writing software all set up. Susan, Emily, welcome. Hopefully you guys have been able to make some good progress last week. I know I feel a little behind. I definitely feel a little behind just from a week worth of getting pushed back. I was able to catch up on some other administrative things for right now, but yeah, I'm eager to get back into Scarecrow. Susan, you're like revising my short story Wonderland for the anthology today. That is so exciting. So exciting. I think being able to be a part of an anthology is actually really, really cool. So definitely, we got some anthologies going on in the community. We got Faded Fantasy. We also will have the next Freaky Friday Anthology. So we're going to see what type of progress we can make, and we'll check back in more during the break. So make sure to stick around. I'll come join you during the I'll come hop into the chat with you. Hey, what's up, Courtney? You're like sharing my great news. I just finished the final edit of Falling on the anniversary of finishing the first draft of Falling. I had a mobile hotspot my computer to get it done, but yay. Courtney, that's absolutely incredible. I'm so proud of you, my friend. I know how much work you put into your debut novel, Falling for a Storm, and it's going to be so awesome. And I really am wishing you the best of luck with the book launch and getting the final touches in and getting it out to your readers. So thanks for sharing the good news, Courtney. That's really exciting. Definitely keep us updated when you're planning to launch it, so that way we can let everyone in the community know. Excellent. But on to the writing. So let's do it. As you can see, we're going to hop into writing sprint number 1. I'm all ready. Are you ready? Whether you are writing, editing, revising, brainstorming, author branding, or something in between, come join us because it's time to write now. All right, my friends. How did that writing sprint treat you? Were you able to make any progress that time? Hopefully, we were able to push ourselves and make a little bit of headway. How did it treat you? Were you able to get any words in, ideas, editing, or something else altogether? So it's really interesting. With the part of the book that I'm in Scarecrow, I feel like I'm it it's interesting. So I originally in the rough draft I had a couple other characters, and I've since removed them from this part of the book, and I think that was better. So now the story is really able to focus on the four characters who we're with right now, which is Scarecrow, the Pixie, the Grizzly Bear, and the Skunk. Um, and it's good. This part of the book has a much much darker tonally. And in the rough draft, I think it's interesting. This is one of the shortest chapters that I had in the book. And I think this was kind of a transitionary chapter where I'm really getting them from point A to point B. And when I looked at it, it doesn't really accomplish that all too much other than them walking forward and talking a little bit. And I think what I did was I was doing a little bit of character development, but it didn't really feel like it was that helpful, because the next chapter picks up the pace a little bit. And as I was thinking through it, I kind of had a brainstorm, as you guys saw, right? Whenever I get to a new chapter, I always review the chapter and then ask myself, like, how do I need to revise it to move forward? I'm going to add some more tension points. I need to make the antagonist, our main antagonist, feel a little bit more present overall in these next few chapters. Um, and then I'm also continuing to want to further develop our two new characters in the group, the bear and the skunk, so that way the readers can feel one way or the other about them. So yeah, doing a mix of character development, world building. And I don't really think where there's too much plot heavy stuff in this chapter. Yeah, it's like I don't think. Yeah, I wouldn't really say there's too much plot heavy stuff in this chapter. So nice, Susan. You're like, you never wrote flash fiction. The only time you wrote flash fiction was 9 years ago for the Gotham Writers Workshop contest. Ooh, that's exciting. And I know we have a lot of flash fiction going on in the community right now. And I know there's actually a lot of writers who are really interested in flash fiction. Nice, Emily. You're like, I did make process for the beginning of chapter 5. And I'm actually super excited. So for anyone who hasn't checked it out, I just dropped a new video on the YouTube channel. And I'm glad I was able to finally get it up. I'll see if it lets me show the thumbnail. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, so I'm glad I was finally able to get it. I was like, I probably just have to pick up the thumbnail. But I just dropped a brand new video today for mastering flash fiction. I was like, I'll see. There we go. Awesome. Yep. So I just dropped the new video, another mastering flash fiction. So for anybody who hasn't checked it out already, definitely make sure you check it out after the stream. I'll make sure to link it down in the chat, but it's definitely got it's got some really good tips. It's a really great workshop on how to, like, what is flash fiction first off, and it gives some strategies, some pitfalls, some common mistakes, and some ways to help you rethink what is flash fiction, just to help make the process a little easier for you. You guys know me, I've done so many critiques by this point in time, and I was actually really happy with how this workshop came out. I think when we did the original airing of it with the channel members workshop, I think we tackled some really great questions, and I was like, perfect, Tom. I'm glad I was able to get it out while we still have the open submission period for Freaky Friday. So definitely highly recommend you go check it out after the stream if you're wanting to get a little refresher and get some help with crafting your own flash fiction stories. So definitely worth a view. All right. And yeah, nice, Emily. Like, you did make progress for the beginning of chapter 5. So that's good. It sounds like you were able to push yourself a little bit and make some get into the chapter. I was like, I'm getting into this chapter now. I was just doing more planning for that. I really feel like the next 2 chapters, what am I on, 30 and 31, is it's like kind of a 2-parter. I don't think I don't think they were like heavily. I was like, yeah, I don't think in the rough draft, I don't think they were like too heavily a part 1 and a part 2, but I think I'm pushing them a little bit more into that direction this time around. I'm asking myself if I should end the chapter on a cliffhanger, or if I should just be like, okay, well, they're just entering. Because the characters are about to enter a very dark part of the world. The characters are entering this area of the world called the Nightlands, which is basically a place which is basically stuck in an eternal night, which has taken over this part of the world. And I think originally I just had them enter it, and then I think that's when I ended the chapter. But I'm asking myself if I should keep it like that, where it's like, okay, once they're in the Nightlands, that's the whole next chapter, or if I should wait and be more of a cliffhanger once they kind of hit one of the obstacles inside of it. So I'm kind of thinking back and forth on what feels right. Yeah. I was like, I mean, technically the last chapter was a standalone chapter. Last chapter was definitely a standalone. And actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to have to go back to the book and ask myself how many standalone chapters I have. The first act of the book had a lot of standalone chapters. Act 2 didn't. I would say Act 2 had a few standalone chapters, but yeah, but more two-part chapters. Yeah, Act 2 did more 2-part chapters, and then of course the midpoint was really like 7-8-part chapter with that story arc. I guess I'm asking myself, like, tonally, how I want to frame it. So I'm just thinking through structuring. Hey, what's up, WTC? Like, I finally finished my newest novel, and the second half of it is with beta readers. Then it goes to the editor. Ooh, that is so exciting, my friend. Always really great to hear from you. First off, I'm so happy that you were able to finish that part of the book. I wasn't sure if this the novel was for the same series that you've been working on, or if it's like a brand new novel, part of like a brand new series that you're doing. So, but very great, my friend. Glad you were able to make some solid progress with it. And of course, beta readers getting feedback is so important, right? So we always want to make sure that we get feedback from readers, so that way we can figure out how to improve our books. Awesome, because unfortunately, we are biased as authors. So, on that note, let's get into our next writing sprint. So, we've got another 30 minutes on the clock. Let's see, we'll get here. And oh, no, that's not right. All right, what are we doing with our life? It's like, gotta figure. I was like, for some reason the screens get really messed up when I do that. Okay. All right, there we go. And now we got it. Awesome. So here we go. I got another 30 minutes on the clock, and we're going to push. We're going to see just what we can accomplish. So let's do it. I'm ready. And yeah. So whether you are writing editing, revising, brainstorming, author branding, or something in between. Come join us because it's time to write now. All right, my friends, how did that writing sprint treat you? Were you able to make any progress that time? Hopefully, just hopefully, you're able to push yourself and get in a couple words, a couple ideas, or something else all together. It's interesting because I have to paint and set up the visualization of where they're at right now. And I'm asking myself, like, I probably need to go look up some better terminology for painting a picture of this wasteland that they're in, surrounded by cliffs. It's not very exciting. The next area they're about to head into is way more exciting. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm like trying to think of the right way to describe this in a very short, succinct way. Man. But yeah, making progress. I mean, I was able to start the chapter, but I could feel I was kind of like losing a little concentration there at the end. But as is, glad I was able to push myself and get into this next part. I know I definitely missed getting work on Scarecrow since last week, kind of pushed us back a little bit. So hopefully you're able to make some progress on your end, and I'm glad we were able to push together on this Tuesday. Thank you all for joining me today. Glad you were able to hop in, Cap. I saw you hopped in it there at the end, and glad that we're all staying consistent with our writing. Don't forget, we got some cool things coming up this week. So for anyone who's taking part on Freaky Friday, this Sunday will be a development day. So you'll be able to hop into the Discord and get feedback on your flash fiction stories. Saturday is the next story and critique stream. So if you're wanting feedback on a story excerpt from your book, novel, or something else, make sure to submit now. Link down in the YouTube description down below. I'll be back tomorrow with our weekly Wednesday writers group. Same time, same place, 4 Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, as we're joined by other writers in the community and we chat it up, all things writing. And maybe, just maybe, we'll get a little procrastination as well. So we'll see how we do today. And for those of you who haven't checked out the new video yet, go check it out. We dropped this morning. I dropped the new video on how to master flash fiction. There's that for anybody who's wanting to improve their flash fiction chops. I was like, there we go. How to master flash fiction. There we go. That's like a little flash fiction workshop. Just dropped the video this morning. So there's that for anybody who's wanting help with crafting a flash fiction story. Go check it out. It should be a good time. And that is all that I got for you today, my friends. Thank you all so much for joining. And I'll be back tomorrow. This week, we're going to get some more work in. So let's be consistent. But unfortunately, you found yourself at the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. Words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. It's time to write
Right now.
Sorry.
Right now, not right now, but right now. Read now, right now. Is that right?
Words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you